Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we come together to discuss an anime like we're a book club, and then we turn our discussion over to you, and then you tell us what you think. Are we right? Are we wrong? Usually we're wrong. Tell us. That's the whole point. Really, you're the show. We're just planting the seeds in the garden that you guys are going to cultivate. Boop, 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 boop. That's a metaphor. It's going to be important you understand what a metaphor is for tonight's discussion. Because we watched...
already.
You'll know by the end of this episode.
Oof.
We watched Serial Experiments Lain. Have you ever heard of that? Were you alive in the 90s? I don't know how many of you were. We're old. We were alive when this came out. I'm the youngest here. I get to say that.
No, right?
Fair.
Before we discuss this older anime, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the paranoia to my agent. It's Jeremy with his hot take.
If AI starts handling localization more, I might start watching dub.
Bizzling?
Otherwise, screw it. I'm never watching dub. Dub sucks. There's my hot take.
And the sunny to my boy, it's Jason. Twice in a row, I got you.
Yeah, you did. I was actually going to rip on Sunny Boy with this. I think there is a too far with visual storytelling. And if you have to come away theory crafting what the story actually is, I don't think it's good anime.
Topical.
Yeah.
Jason can't stand the book Animal Farm.
Jason doesn't read.
And my name is Troy, and my hot take is when in anime where they draw the hair over the eye, but they still draw the eye through the hair, I think that looks stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It really bugs me. I don't like it.
You know how irritating it is when making thumbnails to deal with that?
I'll bet.
No, I don't, but it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
All right. Like I mentioned, we watched Serial Experiments Lain. This is because it is special episode time. We are at the beginning of the year. We're watching retro anime. This is our second of our choices. And the next choice we'll talk about in a little bit. But first, let's go to our spoiler-free reviews of Serial Experiments Lain. This was Jeremy's choice, so he's going to start us off.
All right. So I really liked it. I think that there's a lot to chew on here, a lot to think about, and a lot to theory craft about, which I think can be really fun. I think they gave enough tidbits in this to where you can piece some story together, but you have to really be willing to entertain wild ideas and surrealist stuff. So it has the... Yeah, very abstract. It can be very, very confusing. And so, like, in this, I really agree that you brought up Sunny Boy. Like, there is a level of abstraction going on here, and of you having to kind of suspend reality, so to speak, and say maybe things aren't, maybe what I'm seeing is very different from what's really going on. And then I think it can be pretty entertaining. But the art, if art is really important to you as a viewer, you may want to pass just for that reason. The style used here is just really, at least for my taste, very unpleasant. I do have to say it's reminiscent of some of the Korean anime that I've seen in the past. So I know that there is a style to it. It is deliberate. And it may also have to do with, the artistic intention of, this is the sort of response to make you feel uncomfortable, to make you not want to look at it. Maybe that's part of the message of the show, but I really didn't like it. So I think there's pros and cons. This is a tough one. It's a tough one to know whether to recommend. You really have to know the person you're talking to.
Jason, what'd you think?
I would not recommend this. It almost was like we're so abstract that we love smelling our own abstractness. It felt too self-indulgent. I think is the best way to put it, because they went out of their way to obscure certain things about the story and the way things were presented that it left so much muddiness that you weren't sure where you were within the realities that they were presenting. And I know there's a lot of stories out there that do that to show the confusion that the main character is going through and convey that to the audience. But man, did they take it up to 11 with this. And I'm not a big fan of that kind of storytelling. So it has some redeeming qualities, but as Jeremy said, also the art is rough. And Troy made a really good point in our pre-show. Evangelion came out years before this, and Evangelion is beautiful. So yeah, I had a hard time with this one.
I kind of actually agree with Jason here. So I did not enjoy watching this. It was a bit rough, and actually, when I got done, I wrote these guys like, if you're gonna binge it, good luck. That's a lot to take in. However, having watched it, I enjoy it. I would say I'm glad I did. I like the experience. It was a very 90s time capsule, very bizarre, very abstract story. I do want to talk a little bit about Sunny Boy, because Sunny Boy is one of my favorite anime, which also has a very bizarre and abstract story, which with a lot of themes is like the point of it. But what I felt Sunny Boy really did well that I think is missing here is I still understand, even if I didn't understand what the characters were doing, I understood how they were feeling about it. Like when they get the resolution, I understand that this was a success and that they are overjoyed. When characters are doing stuff in here, I'm not even sure they are understanding what's happening, so they're not even really sure how they're feeling about it. There's a disconnect that I felt at least Sunny Boy gave me this while I'm chewing on all this abstract and themes and subtext, where Lane is just like subtext, subtext, subtext. The end. So I where Jason said they're kind of up their own butt here, I kind of agree with that. I do also feel that this was part of the times. It was very 90s. When I'm watching this, I was getting Matrix vibes off of it too, where it's like we've got deep thoughts about deep things to say, very similar themes. This came out a year before the Matrix, and I have a feeling it helped shape a little bit of the Matrix. So if you're into stuff like Paranoia Agent, Perfect Blue, Sunny Boy, this might be an experience you're willing to go on. If you're just looking for a good, fun anime, this ain't it. So for most people, I wouldn't recommend. All right, let's talk about the opening, guys. What did you think about the opening? I don't think
Alanis Morissette and Sarah McLachlan team up to give you a super emo 90s OP.
All it needed was a shot of a dirty child swinging behind a chain link fence.
Yes.
With all the colors blended out of the frame.
Yes.
Like if that showed up, I'd been like,
dogs.
Yes, and sad dogs walking by. It was so 90s. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all I have to say about it is wow.
I didn't like either the OP or the ED, honestly. They didn't do it for me.
The ED without any spoilers or anything, the audio was really difficult for me. I did not like the audio. The visuals, I think, make more sense the farther you get in the series. But initially you're like, why? What?
Present day.
Hey, no,
present time.
Oh. No, I actually that grew on me a lot. By the end, I was enjoying it.
I'll be honest. So the first time the OP played, I was like, "What a throwback!" I feel like I've heard this '90s song 100 times, and I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
By the end, it grew on me, and I played it a couple times on my own without the anime. I grew up listening to music in that time. I don't mind some Alanis Morissette on the radio. So the song is called Duvet. If you need to know, good. There's some imagery in the opening I kept thinking meant something. I couldn't crack it. It was the crows, because a flock of crows is called a murder, and I'm like, okay, so is murder happening here? Is this actually a murder mystery? And the crows are hinting that, and it never tied back into anything, and I have no idea what the opening means, other than some of the obvious stuff you see in it. But more on that when we get to the spoiler section, which we're about to. But before we do, you guys want to know what's the next anime we're watching, and we can't tell you yet, because as of recording this, we're having a voting contest where you guys gave us suggestions and are now voting to see what our next retro anime is going to be. However, since you're hearing this, the winner has been chosen. But we don't know it because we're in the past.
Time dilation.
Time is not all one thing. I don't have memories of the future.
And
do you exist if you don't have memories?
Or if you're not remembered by others?
What I need you to do is go look at the episode description of this episode, or go to our website. It'll tell you who the winner was. Congratulations to the winner. I hope it was a close race.
Yep, I hope so too. Everybody gets one vote. Make sure you go to the Anime Baka Club. Wait, it's already done, isn't it?
It's done. Yeah, it's too late.
It's too late. Too
late. go there anyways and see. Like
I will
Troy
also
said.
on our Twitter account at Baka Podcast. I'll also be announcing the winner, so it'll be mentioned. You'll be able to find it, but unfortunately, we're not able to tell you that right now. Our apologies. And with that, we're going to our spoiler section, and normally that counts for recapping the Scoot story, which will try to happen here, but this is going to be hard to recap. But there's definitely going to be a lot of character discussion and theory discussion, so it is helpful to know what's happening to join in those theory discussions. We have not done any research or to back up any claims. We are shooting in the dark, and we're all dying to get on like a YouTube video or Wikipedia to find out what this anime actually was about. So you're going to hear our random thoughts we came up with. They are going to be stupid as hell. bear with us for this very old anime that probably most people already understand and have broken down in many college essays. Bear with us. Spoiler warning. Jason, do you know when this anime takes place? Present day, present time.
You're right. 100%.
Okay, so that's yelled at you at the beginning of every episode. Is that in English, or Japanese in the subtitle version? Jeremy?
It's in English. It's the same on both. I watched like the first half of the first episode in dub just to see, because 90s. I thought, who knows? And yeah, that is exactly the same sound, same everything for that part.
So I just to get this out of the way as far as dub and sub, we've watched quite a few 90s and early 2000s anime with dub, and like Samurai Champloo, that's in the 2000s, so it not quite correlated, but like the dub's pretty good. Same with Evangelion, like the dub was pretty good. This was not good. You had a lot of like, yes, I would like to.
Oh, you got the Godzilla thing going.
Yeah, there was a decent amount of it.
That's funny.
The problem is, I couldn't tell sometimes if that was intentional, though, to give that eerie feeling of the voices aren't coming from the people you think they're coming from.
Let's go with that.
I did pay attention after watching the first half in dub. I don't know why, but it just kind of bothered me as well, the mouth movement. And so I started paying attention to it in sub, and it was syncing up fairly well, to the point where I forgot to pay attention.
Okay. Good note. All right, so So yes, present day, present time, Japan, Tokyo, a lot happens in Shibuya, but 1997 present time. So the past for you listeners, but present time that we once grew up in.
30 years ago.
Yep. Almost. Yep. Oof.
Oof.
Oh, that hurt. I didn't want you to do that.
Oof.
Okay, so we see some bustling city streets. We see like a couple who are making out in an alley, and then we see a young schoolgirl who's running, and then she climbs to the top of a building. She says something. She says, "I no longer need to be in this world," and she falls from the roof to her death. This character's name is Chisa. We're not going to discuss her, but you're going to need to know her name going forward. And this is the match into the powder keg of events that are going to happen in this series. I do want to come back to this moment, though, because I kept waiting for them to show us how this event starts. Because, like I said, it's the catalyst that starts our story, but something obviously led to here. It doesn't give a lot of context. I have a theory on it, but it does not take much time to explain it. So when we get to some part where you feel like, if you feel like something explained it, please stop us then, and we'll call it out there. But moving on, we come to a young, very shy. I mean, she's typical 90s shy pixie girl. Like, she's got short hair, but like one lock with a little braid in it. Clearly not very sociable. Round face, cute, not pretty. And like they've mentioned, the art style is very much unique. I also don't mind the art style. I felt like it matched what the series was going for, which is it's unsettling to look at, but I think they want me to be unsettled at every moment. Also to describe the like, she steps out on the street and everything is white. The street's white, the sky is white, the black power poles and power lines are humming everywhere she goes, and the shadows have like red
a miasma.
Thank you. Miasma is perfect. Wafting through them everywhere. And this is how the world looks to us most of the time. And again, just nothing feels normal or natural. And the character designs kind of tie into that for me. So while I understand what you guys were saying, it is ugly. I enjoyed it in the context of the anime. But this main character is Lane.
Not lame. Lane.
Not lame. Lane. We need to keep this to the character, I think, guys. What do you think? Just not
Which one?
We'll explode into the
like,
whole story immediately.
The one we spend most of our time with, Jason. Because yes, there is. Just so you know, this deals with multiple personalities. On the surface, it's something more than that, but we'll get to that. But yeah, the shy girl who, for the most part, we see going through this adventure and is mostly not aware of the other stuff happening yet. So, your guys' thoughts on Lane?
If we're talking about just this particular one, bored me to tears. I couldn't connect emotionally with this character. And yeah, nearly every scene is just unsettling. Watching her do stuff and like other people interacting with her is like really cringy. And because of that, I never felt an importance to root for her in any capacity. And also with the way the story goes, and some things just flat out don't matter. I lost all connections with this character, so I didn't particularly like this one.
In an ordinary type of story, I would completely agree with you, but there was something about how lost she was that I thought everything else around her kind of helped make that palatable for me. It was interesting to observe how she behaved, how she interacted with others, and that she was always confused and she was always trying to figure out what she wanted. Like when we first start to get to know her, she's a technophobe, basically. Like she doesn't want to get involved with electronics. She doesn't want to even like bring up her small PC, MacBook, whatever that thing is, the Navi thing that she's got on her desk, right? But then as time progresses, she starts really getting into it to the point that is like very difficult to explain how she's getting into it as much as she is. And yet her personality still kind of stays the same. She is inquisitive. She's trying to figure out the mystery of reality, really, is what it seems like. Whether there is a better place than where she's at, and that was interesting to observe.
So I got from her, especially like the scenes with her parents, like trying to say something to her parents and they just literally don't respond. They just almost completely ignore her. The walk alone to school, the standing on a crowded train alone. They do a really good job of showing just how isolated and alone she is in this world. So that when she starts plugging into the computer and going online looking for friends, that's a very relatable thing. Jason has a point. In a normal story, this is, I mean, she can't carry the story on her own, and she's not well developed enough to. But I felt a lot of sympathy for her that worked enough to get me through the story.
It's interesting because as we've talked about before, like each of us finds different value in different parts of the storytelling of an anime. And for me, like the world building is the most important part. And so seeing all the features and qualities that Lane was bringing to the table actually stoked the fires for me of like, what is the bigger story here? I'm even more curious now. So her type of character actually worked in the favor for somebody who just wants to pay attention to the world setting.
All right. Any thoughts on her family, who we kind of see as she's heading out the door? She has a computer-loving dad, a mom who does not talk to her, and a sister who seems to be very judgmental all the time.
It's hard to talk about the family without getting too much into the story, because and also like we're going to start throwing theories around just surrounding the people she calls family. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
If I'm going to stick to the characters, however, I thought Dad was okay. In fact, I think I connected with him most out of everyone, even though there were some decisions I was like, why would you do that? And then like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or kind of. Mom, I couldn't stand. I thought she was an absolute bad word. And then there's too much to get into with sister, so I'm going to leave that one on the table. She was okay. She was just kind of there for the story. Was she? This is hard.
Yeah, this whole
I'll just leave it
recap
there.
is going to be hard because even going through my notes, I still don't know what were important scenes I need to call out and stuff. And yeah, everything has 3 meanings, maybe. Yeah, just we're doing our best. And when you feel ready to throw out your theories or to just start diving in, we got to rip off the Band-Aid at some point. So when you feel it's the right time, go ahead.
I think let's probably wait till we get to like episode 4 or 5. Because I think these first 3 episodes were kind of dealing with fairly structured, like, this is reality, this is what they're experiencing on the computers. And then we'll get into it around there.
And
at least that's my opinion.
I did want to say one thing, especially when I'm watching this first episode and we're talking about a dead girl, she's online and you should go online, and so I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. This is early 90s warning about, hey, internet's gonna be dangerous, guys. And that theme is definitely in here, even though, to be honest, I walked away from this like, I don't know if the show wants me to go on the internet or not anymore. I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't figure this out. But especially these early episodes, because this is so old, a warning from 1997 about technology is like, you move next to a pet cemetery and a kindly old man comes down. He's like, you don't want to go down that road. And you're like, ooh, I've already buried my entire family in the cemetery and they are currently stabbing me in the neck. But thank you for the warning. We have moved past that. Do you have any advice on AI? So thank you, Lane, for the warnings. But the themes, we opened that Pandora's box a long time ago. We've been living with it for a while.
I will have to say, it's nice that we did get a warning about Google Glass, or I mean, not the Apple.
The Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
If those people start yelling out, "Let's all love Lane," we need to run away.
Yes.
Okay, so Lane goes to school, and there's a girl crying there, and so the kids are talking about the suicide of Chisa, but they're also they asked her if she got an email. Apparently, I don't know if it's all the girls or all the kids, but a bunch of people got emails from Chisa after she died. And everyone's like, is this a prank? Is this going on? They ask Lane if she got one. She's like, I don't like computers, so I don't know.
I guess this is back before scheduling emails was commonplace.
Right? Even though it still would be unsettling, even with that, be there with the explanation. It's such a freaky thing. But
yeah,
I want to point this out. I think this is important. Lane has a hallucination here. She has not touched a computer yet. And she has a major hallucination here in class. That's for later, but I didn't remember that until I was going through my notes, and I'm like, oh, that kind of changes some things. Because
I don't remember that. What did she hallucinate?
I don't. I just wrote down that she starts hallucinating.
Okay.
I don't remember if she saw an image of Chisa yet, because she's going to start seeing Chisa soon, but it might have just been like
the train
waves. Thing? No, the train happens later.
Okay.
Is it when she's like opening the door in the school and somebody walks towards her and it's another student?
I literally just have Lane sees hallucinations during class.
Oh, good.
You guys can take notes too. All right. She goes home and she turns on her computer. Now, in this world, computers are called navies and the internet is called the wired. And it's not exactly the internet. It's almost more like it reminded me almost of Cowboy Bebop. Everything's wavy. Things like float to the surface of the screen and float back, and then like nothing's set in place. 90s had a weird vision of what the internet was gonna be.
Yep. And when they say email, what they really mean is more like a chat, because she starts having a conversation with Chisa and Chisa's responding. So yeah.
So this is what's kind of funny also about. Oh wait, no, she doesn't have her new Navi, but like they're not only doing email, but they're also able to talk like as if it was like an Echo device.
Yeah.
And so it was really strange, like the 90s, like, the 4x3 screens that they had and these huge towers, but they're talking to it.
Yep.
Yeah, so she turns it on. She does have a message from Chisa. Starts talking to it. Chisa, she asks how she's asking her questions. Chisa says that she's still alive but doesn't need her body, and she says God is here. And then we have Lane having dinner with her family, and she tries to tell her mom about the email, and the mom does not respond. She just completely ignores her, which seemed really horrible at the time. It's still horrible, but now having seen the ending, okay, no, that would, it's almost understandable.
Yeah.
But then she talks to her father, and he is getting new upgrades for his Navi, which is like 6 screens in his office and huge. And he's telling her like, Navis are wonderful. Hers is like my first Navi, See and Spell. It's like a little red thing on a little tiny desk. And he's like, you should get like a real Navi and start, socializing and connecting with people online.
Everybody's connected.
Yeah. And he's just loving it. Like he's got like this huge, oh God, I just love being on my computer. He was probably
I love how
playing
his
Power
laughter.
World.
Yeah, probably. I love how his laughter changes. Like he's got this very, calm, deeper voice, and then all of a sudden, as soon as he flips the monitors on, he just lets out this maniacal laugh. Like that's what the internet does. It immediately just changes him.
So the next day is when she's on the train and she sees it stop and hit somebody, and she's like hallucinating blood on the power lines, and she ends up walking home and seeing a vision of Chisa. And like after the train, she like floats through the day, like she's waking up at certain times. But yeah, we don't know what happened with if the train actually hit someone. It's very abstract, and especially since our main character not only isn't fully aware of all the things she's doing and is hallucinating some of the things that are happening. So we have a very hard grasp of actually knowing what is real.
I remember what her hallucination was. She was sitting in the classroom and she would look at the blackboard, and no matter what was being written on the blackboard, it always turned into fuzz. And then at one point it turned into the question, like, why don't you come here? I think it said.
That's the next episode. I
Is
have
that the
that
next
written, I have that one written down, that the blackboard says you should join the Wired or something like that.
Jeremy, maybe you should take notes.
I know, right?
No, actually it's right now. It's after the train. She hallucinates again looking at the blackboard, but yeah, I don't remember what the first hallucination was.
That's gonna bug me.
There were definitely moments after I finished where I was like, I kind of want to go back and rewatch something. I did rewatch Chisa's death, because again, I was trying to figure out what's the starting point of some things. But yeah, I don't remember what that was. All right, our next episode, we have a cyberpunk club bar cafe. Kids are allowed dancing.
Siberia.
I know, Siberia.
In the 90s, the word Siberia was the coolest word anyone could think of. If you had your video game named Siberia, it was awesome. If you named your club Siberia, it was awesome. Siberia was just the best word ever.
Heck, even Dragon Ball Z got in it with Cybermen.
and it wasn't spelled like in Russia, right? Like it wasn't
right.
an SE. No, it was cyber. So like CY cyber, and then Iria at the end. And it's like, okay, nice play on words here. Real subtle.
So we see a young man buy drugs, and he opens it up, and there's like a little device inside of it, and he ends up swallowing it. This is called Excella. It's apparently nanobots that get into your brain and enhance your brain function so that you speed up. But from our point of view, everything slows down, right?
This plot point is so dumb. The reason I don't like it is because it comes up once and then we never hear about it again throughout the entire anime, except for like there's one scene of it later on.
Well, I think it establishes
what?
It establishes some basic principles and rules about the technology and what we might be experiencing. Yeah. No, it does.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does.
For one dude in one scene.
Yeah, it does. Here, I'll explain why. So one thing that it explains is give me a second. It explains that when you partake of something like Excella, it messes with your brain and the way your brain functions. And so what you perceive is not time in a linear fashion, but you might experience, the future, the past, the present, all jumbled up and messed up. So what it establishes is that they have technology that's already on the streets, and it's purchasable for anywhere from like $40 to $100 per capsule. So it's pretty common. So what we're seeing through the eyes of the main character could also be jumbled up.
That's so you're telling me this whole anime is a drug-induced hallucination.
I wouldn't call it a drug because remember they said it's not really a drug. So what I would call
Yeah,
it
no,
is
it's nanobots.
technology
Yeah.
induced hallucination. Yes, I
And
would
if
call
that's what you're suggesting and that's actually what's happening, then I hate this anime more.
it. But it's not just a hallucination. I think there's a lot more to it than that. And I mean, we'll get into it later. But I think this lays the groundwork for just how wild the technology is and what we might experience here. That it's not just as simple as, he takes a drug and it speeds him up a little bit, his perception increases, and then he goes back to normal. There's more to it. It really messes you up.
To weigh in, while I agree, Jeremy, and it is important to like you said, establish those rules of the technology we're dealing with, so that when other really wacky stuff starts happening, we can say, well, I mean, there's nanobots out there, and there's literally time dilation abilities and all this stuff. But even just the whole like having the narrator stop the story, explain how the drug works, and make it like this is gonna be big, and then no one ever takes the drug again. That feels like a missed beat. I do think they needed to do something to introduce that technology, like you're saying, but I do think it needed to be woven into the whole story better, rather than, hey, drug, real quick, just so you know it exists. We're moving on.
Yeah, that's in the sub. That's kind of how it came across. Was just this guy's taking the drug. Here's how it works. Moving on. We're not really gonna. It's not about the drug. Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, if you say nanobots, you best bring receipts to me.
Yeah. Well, did you guys read the text like in the back? I paused it and I read the walls of text that were going by.
Nerd.
Because
go ahead.
I thought it was fascinating. Did you guys read it?
No.
I didn't care at all.
Oh, it was great. It was like reading a GURPS technological summary of like how nanobots would work in a video game setting or in a tabletop setting. And
I
they
am
had
so glad I didn't watch that.
Oh, dude, it was awesome. They were like, nanobots would work as if they were a spray paint, and you spray it on the wall, but it's got like little tractors and stuff inside of it, and they're rolling across and deciding where they're going to apply at different points. You just spray it in one spot, and it just spreads on its own, and then you send signals, and they start changing colors and everything, and we'll have screens, and I was like, man, I've read this so many times in like futurist ideas of how these things would function. And they always describe them as little machines. And then later, as time goes by and science progresses, they're like, well, actually, it'd be like little, you wouldn't recognize them as machines. They're more like little molecules attached together or amino acids connected together. And they wouldn't look anything like a tractor, but so just, it was fun.
I watch on my lunch breaks, and I had to get back to work, so
Oh.
no time for pausing and reading. Yeah, so Lane, who's still talking with Chisa, and her sister sees that. And then when Lane goes outside, there's a man hiding behind a power pole that scares her. She runs away. And then at school, her friends ask her to go to Siberia with them. And they invite her to the club. Then she goes home and she gets a delivery of a brand new Navi that her dad bought her. So she gets a upgrade on her computer. And she asks him to set it up immediately. And she starts messaging on it. But then her friends message her, and she does go to Siberia even though she turned them down. When she gets to the club, she's recognized by the DJ. And he's like, hey, it's you, but you seem nice now. She's like, I don't know what that means. Well, anyway, this drug user shows back up and starts shooting up the club, and everyone's running away except for Lane, who just stands there frozen at the side of the dance floor. And then he starts talking to her, and he starts yelling at her and asking her, why are you making me do this? And she walks up. She tells them that everyone is connected, and he shoots himself in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that happened.
Okay. So I don't have an explanation for this. I don't even have a theory for this, but I do want to bring up a couple other events that were tied into it, that we skipped a little bit. One of them was when the guy took his Excel in the previous episode, or at the previous time we saw him. He looked over while he was in his stupor, and he saw Lane, but she was dressed differently, and she like shoved somebody backwards in the club onto the floor. Right. And then she like looked at him, and he looked at her, and there was this recognition on his face, or shock and awe and obsession, almost like he couldn't stop staring at her. So I don't know what exactly happened, but whatever he did when he took Excella, whatever it messed up in his brain, when he looked at her, something happened that messed him up. And the drug is supposed to last for, I believe, 48 hours, it said, until it is dissolved in your stomach.
Right.
So he was still under the effects of that same drug. So it might have put him in some, I guess I do have a little theory. It might have put him in some kind of like a state where he was connected and to her somehow, because she was emphasizing everybody's connected, right? He was connected to her in a way that he was being influenced by some kind of other aspect or other personality of hers or something, because everybody mistakes her for this other personality.
Right.
It happens constantly.
I think the term for the other one is Wired Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he had seen Wired Lane, and Wired Lane is the one who is prompting this attack.
Yeah, which makes more sense when you get to know Wired Lane. She's kind of a jerk.
Well, not always. Really up to you.
You're gonna have to point out when she wasn't, because I can't think of a time.
Okay.
She was pretty awful.
You're a jerk. You know. Oh no, she was a jerk. You're right.
Yeah.
I guess it's something we'll have to discuss, though, especially for my theories that come up, is like, what is Wired Lane's motivations and goals? Is she an evil character? I don't think she is, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
More to go.
Yeah.
All right, so Lane is talking with the police, and Alice comes up and she's trying to, apologize to her. When Lane goes home, this one was out. I was like, okay, this is so trippy. She goes home and no one's there.
Yes.
The house is completely empty. She searches the whole house. She goes online and then searches the house again and is empty again. And then goes to bed, gets up, and mom's making breakfast in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And the police were even like, hey, we called your house and nobody picked up.
No
they dropped her off and they're like, you have a key, right? My head was going, did she kill them? Are they all dead? And she's just hallucinating that they're still alive.
Right.
Like, I was going through so many different possible theories of like, what is the explanation for this? I enjoyed this decision, but man,
do you have an explanation for this?
There's two possibilities as I see it. One is that they were gone at the time because, as we learn later, they're not her real family. The other is that this is part of the jumbled time thing, and she's seeing things in the wrong order. So even though she
left.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm under the impression that her mom, dad, and sister are not real people, and are loaded and unloaded depending on her state. And I think in this particular instance, they didn't get loaded in time, and that's why they show up when she wakes up.
But you think they're programs?
Mm-hmm.
That's very possible. Were they among all the other people that we saw at the end in the last episode?
Yeah.
I didn't.
I saw him up in the sky with her.
No,
but
they have breakfast together, and he looks at the empty chair and is wistful about it.
That's right.
So yeah, the family is existing in the end.
That
ending,
should imply that they're real.
That ending and what's what everyone is doing is super important to all theories. Like it's really important. My impression is that they are a real family, and the dad has cut a deal that he will let this child live with them as their daughter, and he's getting free upgrades because he's always talking about, hey, new upgrades are coming for me, and the mom's like, how are you paying for all this? And he doesn't answer. And I think his dad cut a deal with this company. Yeah, you hook me up with 6 monitors, and yeah, that little kid can live in my spare room.
I'll pretend she's my daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, that would make sense if of how, because that was one of the things that bugged me. It's like, how is she getting all of this equipment into her room, and two, like some of this equipment is multiple people worth of weight to carry.
Oh, right.
Like that other people had to install some of this because there's no way that she would just be able to like lift this out of, from her front door and get it up the stairs. So that would make sense if dad cut a deal with the company to have her live there, and then like all of the stuff is being provided.
Yeah. Although I do think that there's still some element of unrealisticness in the type of equipment that's brought in. And I think it's deliberate because I do think some of her equipment, as opposed to his, is not real. Like, I'm not seeing it anywhere else in the show. Nobody else has anything like it. There is that one kid who's like, oh man, what is that in there? Is that liquid carbon? Oh, liquid carbon. Okay. But like the stuff that she supposedly got in there is so advanced that I guess maybe the company could be providing that as well. But I found it more likely that she was just creating it. That's my theory, is that she was just materializing it.
So if that's the case, then where was the family when she was looking for him?
That's what I mean. They could either have been out at the time, and I don't mean like just out. I mean like they could have been cleaning the house. Like the company could have been cleaning the house for some reason because she was involved in a crime, something. I don't know. Or it could have been that jumbled time, because we do see a later time when she comes into the house and the plants are all dead and everything's empty and nobody's there. I think she was fast forwarding a memory to that point and juxtaposing it in here. I don't think this was truly linear.
I hate that kind of storytelling.
The next night your mom's there when she goes out to school. There's a black car now with red dots in it, which I thought was really cool because we just had the gun with the red laser sight, and it makes a big deal about what the red laser sight's out. And now suddenly there's a car and there's these red lasers looking out the windows pointing at her. And even though it ends up not being guns, you, the viewer, have already attached it to the gun. This is
danger.
Death. Yeah, exactly. I thought that was cool. Showing, not telling, storytelling. The
progression of it was also cool. How first you've got like this guy who's watching her and it's really uncomfortable, and you're like, okay, are they going the predator route? Like, why is he watching her? And then next you see a car pull up, and as she's walking by the car, I don't think there's lights the first time. The car's just there and she's freaked out. Maybe there's one light. And then, well, there was one once and then there was two the second time. But I don't remember if there was a previous time where there was none. But then it just progressed more and more, and then eventually they get out of their car. Like, just that, it's almost like you're
and the lasers are poking into her room.
Yeah, and they're like just roving around on her forehead. It was very, I don't know, it was really weird. Good ambience, I think.
So she runs away from the car. At school that day, all her friends are making jokes about the club shooting. And then Alice even calls out later, like, it's weird how we're reacting to this. Like, we're not taking this seriously at all. And her friends are like, well, we're traumatized. Things happen, And Alice is like, this is bizarre. But that we don't follow up on that because there's a brown envelope in her locker, and she gets a new computer upgrade. This is called the Paishuke.
Psych.
Nope.
That's how it's spelled in the sub, is just psych.
I know, but that's not what they call it.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
Pashuke.
Okay, I
Yep.
looked this up. Paishuke is how you used to pronounce psych. This is apparently
really?
the original pronunciation of the word.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, she has the psych chip. She asked her dad about it, but he just leaves. So she goes to Siberia, and then ends up talking to these 3 younger kids, and the main one, whose name is Taro, who I probably should have added to talk about. We should talk about Taro because he tells her how to upgrade, but he's also hidden on her. And then he's like, "Oh, but you're not the right lane. I want the wild lane." But yeah, so they tell her how to upgrade. Your guys' thoughts on Taro, because he is important.
Is he though? I don't know. He was served his purpose, I think. I don't know. I don't have a lot of thoughts on him.
It was interesting to find out what his role was, like the fact that you've got this secret organization going on in the background and he's
But he wasn't
connected
a
to it
part
somehow.
of him.
Right, but
They
he's
wouldn't
like
let him in.
a squire of the knights, so to speak. Like it was interesting, but I found it to be believable that you would have this little kid who's like up on the latest technology, and he's gonna show her like, okay, yeah, no, this is how you replace this part, and this is how you do that, and that worked for me. Like a kid would be the one that would come in and be like, yeah, I'll show you how to put a new chip in your motherboard, because they're obsessed with it, right? And he's going to be really good at it. And he's close to the same age. So yeah, but other than that, I don't have much to say.
This anime makes a point about kids and their interconnections with the Wired multiple times. Because at first, I found this interaction very bizarre. Like 3 kids in a nightclub the day, or time's hard to tell here, but very close after a shooting just happened. And they have these 3 kids.
They were on the stairs the day of the shooting, because
Right.
they told her to watch out.
Yeah. So it just, to me, was really freaky that these kids are even here. They also know all about this stuff. But like I said, kids is a major theme here, and their connection with the technology. And not to play my reveal my hand too soon, but I think this character is a real Judas.
Oh.
Come back later.
Okay.
All right. Mostly I didn't like him though. I don't like he had that whiny voice. It didn't work for me. And then yeah, we have Mika, the sister. She sees the men. I call them the men in goggles. They're like Men in Black, but they have Apple Vision Pluses on with red laser dots.
It's the version 2 that's yet to come out.
Yeah, a little streamlined, a little sleeker.
Yep.
And she yells at them, and they make her go away. And then we see Lane starting to upgrade her Navi, which is the important thing about the psych chip is it lets you project yourself into the Wired. That is literally its role, and so that's going to be a big upgrade for her. Now we can do like Reboot, The Matrix. Reboot was a way 90s callback. I should have just gone with The Matrix. Sorry.
Reboot was good.
That was a dark show, man.
It was.
Got so like the first season's so light, and then it just gets so dark later on. It's so good. All right, she's continued to upgrade. Her father checks in on her. Her sister's worried. The dad's like, "No, this is normal. This is supposed to happen." And then we see a man fleeing from a child. And at school the next day, the girls are talking about a suicide, and Lane's like, "Oh, I heard about that on the Wired." And they're like, "You're kind of getting weird." Alice meets the little girl who's chasing the man and gives her a stuffed dog, which I thought for sure meant Alice was next, right? I was like, oh, that's how they pick you. If you pick up the dog, you're in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But this one's weird, guys. There's like a game. So 2 video games apparently got tied together. There's like a Doom-like game where you run around killing other players, and there's also a tag game for children that have gotten mixed together on the wire, and so now children are chasing people to their death in the wire. And then we see like this teenager getting chased, and he turns and fires up. He in the game he has like a pretend gun. There's nothing there. It's his hands in the shape of a gun, but it's making all the gun sounds. And then it cuts to him like sitting on a roof, holding his legs. Someone's asking him questions, and there's white sheets on the ground. I think we did see
it looks like a body's in him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks like bodies in him. I honestly thought this was going to be a reference to like the very earliest school shootings and how they were attributed to video games, and that doesn't happen for another 2 years in real life. Columbine's not till 99. So this was just its own thing. And I don't know what much to say. Well, this is the first time we hear about the Knights, though, and that this might have been a plan by the Knights. And the Knights are they're basically the antagonists of the story, in that they are working to create a religion and manipulating the Wired for their own purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
My gut says that Wired Lane was responsible for tying those 2 games together. I can't remember if the anime actually says it or not, but I think that's what's going on. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, when you write a program and then you write another program, those 2 programs don't talk to each other unless you create pathways for them to communicate.
I thought this was the Knights getting ready for their next experiment with kids.
Well, see, and that's the thing that's weird, is that when we learn about the children, we learn that somebody else is setting up an experiment and everything, and they've got it and it's working, but it's working wirelessly. But it doesn't seem like it was the Knights that are doing it. It seems like it's God that did it as part of Protocol 7.
But they're on the same team. The Knights are working for God at this point.
The Knights were worshiping God. That's true. So I guess he might have been working through them. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's hard to tell.
Lane is still working on her computer, and then the goggled men are outside again, and she yells at them, and one of their goggles shatters from the screen.
I hate this scene.
You hate this scene? Why?
It's giving me Akira vibes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. So for one, the dots on her face from their goggles are going all over the place, but then it turns to them and they're just standing still. And it's like, okay, I'll let that slide. And then the goggles explode. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. Are we doing like Neo at the end of, The Matrix, where, he takes down a sentinel in the real world, and then they never revisits. Well, okay, not never, but we don't revisit it until it's like full blown.
But it's exactly that.
Her
powers are now coming into reality. She's now no longer powered in the Wired. She can now manipulate actual physical things.
But at this point, we don't know that that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's true. All we know is that she has the ability to do that, and that's weird and unusual, and we're left to wonder, like, why? Why is she
for
special?
like 8 episodes?
Yeah, but I don't know. I like that they exposed just a little bit this early, and then let you marinate on it.
Yeah,
yeah.
But follow up. Not
they do.
Oh,
but I don't know. I think the pacing suits me, but.
For the record, when The Matrix did it, you then had to wait like 6 months for the next movie to finally explain it. And it wasn't until like halfway through the movie they explained it. So I feel like they followed up, and this was just showing, hey, she's growing in power. Yeah, we still barely understand what's happening at this point.
I think this There's a difference between a cliffhanger and I'm just not going to touch this. It's like someone throws you a football and then, like, 3 years later they're like, "Oh, we're going to watch the Super Bowl." It's like, okay.
See, I saw it as they were exploring different aspects of her power and who she was. Like, what is Lane from a full
Yeah, what is Lane?
perspective, right? And so this was just one
there
aspect
yet.
of her growing as a character and as an entity, whereas the
It's
rest of
just-
the things needed a chance to be focused on as well. And so I think they were giving other aspects, a lot of the psychology of it and philosophy of it got a lot more attention than
I think that's
the
one of
cool
the
action
problems I'm
parts.
having. One of the problems I'm having a hard time with this anime is it's like this is an anime full of hints and no explanation, and it's like it's just a little no.
I mean,
Okay.
they give a pretty big explanation drop in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Right. You have to wait 8 episodes to get an answer. I'm just like,
But
or at least
yeah.
a glimpse of it, right? Like there's no trail on the way.
I
Anyways,
had figured out a pretty good chunk. I had to adjust a lot of my theories that I had at episode 6. I had very incorrect theories. But they were not too far off of like the core principles of what was going on. I think there's stuff there. It's just you really have to read into things and you have to start like saying, hey, maybe it means this, maybe it means that. They're not going to tell you. You gotta.
Here's the problem. While I completely disagree with you, Jason, in this next episode you're going to be completely right. It's time for the sisters episode.
Yay!
Oh yeah, this one was so weird.
Okay, so for the first time, there's been a voice talking to Lane, and he now identifies himself. He's God. And
God of the wired, not God of the real world.
I love that he makes that distinction too. That was cool.
the sister is at her boyfriend's and she leaves. She goes to Shibuya and she sees a car accident. And I thought it was really interesting that everyone like she looks and sees the accident and then she just goes on about her day, doesn't even care, and everyone else stops and looks. I think my biggest theory is that I think she dies here. I think she's the one in the accident.
Mm-hmm. There's one fatality. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that it's her wired soul. Yeah, her
soul
psyche is the one that's moving on, and so the rest of this is her getting to terms with that.
Mm-hmm. And never really coming to terms with it,
right?
Because she'll sit there going forever now.
So some of the stuff that happens, we have Lane, who goes through a series of conversations. One's with a doll, one's with a mask, then her mother, then her father. And he starts with like, tell me a story. And the doll's like, all the stories. I'll tell you a prophecy.
Yes. This was so good because what I took away from just this simple conversation with the doll, where the doll said, how can I tell you something you don't know? You already know everything.
Right.
At that point, I was like, okay, so is the doll just referring to, I only have access to the information that you know about, so I can't tell you anything you don't already know? Or is the doll saying, you are omniscient? Mm-hmm. There is nothing you don't know. So immediately at that point, I was like, okay, 2 possibilities here. Which one are we going with? Let's see what happens.
Mash talks about prophecies, but it's not like, I prophesy a chosen one will come. It'd be like anytime you want anything to happen, you are prophesying that it'll happen. I'm gonna go drive to the store. You have prophesied that will happen. So prophecy is always just the cause that creates the effect, right? Is basically what I was getting from him. The mom and dad say stuff too. Mostly, it seems to be God slowly trying to convince her a body sucks. Come to the wired.
Yeah,
that's his main message that he just hammers on her over and over like 100 different ways. The sister, on the other hand, so there's a scene where Lane's in Shibuya and the sisters in Shibuya, they're both giving tissues, moist towelettes from a guy who's just like handing them out as church thing or something. The sisters has this weird ominous message on it, and I didn't write down the message, and I've been hating myself ever since because I'm like, I think that message is really important to this episode, and I don't know what it says.
Something about death, and there's only one, or something like that.
Oh, that's right. It was there won't be enough room for all the
All the dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Anyway, she sees Lane standing in the middle of the road. Then she sees Lane on a giant screen.
She sees her sister in the middle of the road, like having an episode. She's just like, oh well.
But
We all
now that we know later that it's not really her sister, and that every time that she's interacting, she's like, "You're so weird. You're so weird." I kind of get that there's absolutely no loyalty or any desire to help.
Yeah. This weird girl just was brought to your home, and you were just told to shut up and go along with it.
And weird things start happening now too.
That makes a lot more sense as far as the way she treats her.
Yeah.
The news reports that the accident happened because of a hack that would happen to the automated transit system. And then Lane's friends are like, Lane, why did you do that? And Lane's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And the sister has like everything she looks at says, fulfill the prophecy, fulfill the prophecy, fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah, we see her with her family, and then she's the one standing in traffic, and then she's in a McDonald's, and then the messages start appearing, fulfill the prophecy, the lights are shutting off, and then it's like written in blood, and eventually she runs home freaked out, goes to the front door, and she sees herself already in the house, like dressed for the evening, like in a sweatshirt and jeans, and then and then we cut to that person's point of view, and Lane comes up to her and is like, what's going on? And Lane looks, and all you can see is like a shimmer of the sister that we've been following. And the sister says nothing and leaves. And then from this point on, can't talk anymore.
Yep.
Lane enters her room, and now the machines have grown. We're not quite at pit of water yet, which is just,
right.
As a homeowner, freaks me out real bad every time.
Yeah.
But then she says, who will it be today? So we established our theory is that the sister died. So what's happening here at the end?
Don't know. And this is one of the big problems I have with the way they present some of this stuff is we've got multiple people that have this either persona or they are born of the wired, but then they have a physical body, or at least we're led to believe that, or the memories of the people around you are manipulated to believe that. But it's like, where'd the body come from? How, like, is it being manufactured? Is it just strength of will that you will it to be? Do you take the flesh of others and mold your new body? Like, there's no connection to help me understand how the sister has a body if she's dead, or how Lane has a physical body and a wired body. Like, this anime gives me nothing to go on as far as how that is possible within the world that they're setting up.
Well, I think up to this point, I'd agree with you. Like, it's you're not really given an explanation of what tools might exist that could do this. They did mention nanotechnology, and nanotechnology could do this. They could provide a body.
But
the
that's
question
like
is
saying
whether
magic.
Right, and it is. But
Like,
that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
But my point is, if I had seen a room full of tubes with lanes in them and nothing else, like that's all they showed me, and like one of them like is getting out and dressed and like leaves the facility. Brilliant.
Right. Yeah.
That would be great. Right.
Right. But that's not
like,
how they make the bodies.
Obviously.
Yeah. They show us how they make the bodies in the last episode. They just literally materialize out of nothing.
That's the worst explanation I've ever heard.
E equals MC squared, mother.
Yeah. They literally just come out of energy because the nanomachines or whatever convert it, and that is God does this, and so that is what happened to
Yeah, and I
Lane
hated
out
that
there.
scene too. Okay, it's a terrible explanation, but I'll take it.
Okay,
And so the body that inhabits it would be the body from the, or not the body, the psyche that inhabits it would be the psyche from the Wired. And now the question I have is, if the one that died was real, then did the Wired version of her materialize a body and carry on from the point of the death, come home, another Wired version of her is at home in the house? And so they can't, like, that's the part where I'm confused, because the body turned into like this, like you said, a shimmering version of itself as it dissolved away into nothing. If it was a real physical body, it probably wouldn't do that. So it does imply that that
That's
was
a question.
definitely a Wired one.
In the end, when mom and dad are having breakfast or dinner or whatever, they're at the kitchen
There's no
table.
sister.
I did know. Yeah, there's no sister, is there?
Yeah, I think she's dead.
No, we hear her talking and say
She
she's going to
talked.
leave.
But her physical body was not present at the table.
So that
was
then
her
the question
Wired.
become: is sister also a program?
Well, I think that the sister was talking because the sister was now dead, and so she was Wired at that point.
But dead
But
people
that means
come
she
back
didn't
to
bring
life
her
at
back.
the end.
No.
She didn't
Okay.
bring her back.
So at this point, when we were told this later, at this point, when people are dying, they're leaking into the Wired. It's a symptom, a side effect of everything that's going on with Lane. It's not. It's kind of on purpose, but it's also not on purpose. She's not supposed to. The sister's not supposed to go into the Wired, but when she dies, she leaks into the Wired. My thought was because Lane is responsible for killing her. Either she was punishing her for being stalkery or creepy or whatever Wired Lane was thinking. I still really unclear on her motivations, but I think she was trying to bring her back. But since she's in the spirits in the Wired, all she really has is this empty body, and I think the whole mimicking a phone is her like wanting to reconnect with her spirit.
Yeah.
That's a wild guess. I also think at the very end the sister's alive. We just didn't see her on camera because
I find it difficult to believe they would leave her out if they show everybody else that was dead, like the guy who shot himself. They also showed the Chisei. They were all shown to indicate that the dead are brought back.
You're right. I need some time to chew on it because I didn't even consider that she wasn't there. You're definitely right. That's got to be a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they did say the dead are no longer leaking into the Wired. So as of the end of the episode, that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Pin in it. Let's just put a pin in it.
Okay.
Moving on.
Okay. Yeah, now, so dad goes into her room and now like there's a water pit in her room. And like I said, as a homeowner, I'm like, no, you're out. You're out on the street, kid. Can't have a water pit in your room.
Even in the machines were enough for me to be like, I'm not comfortable with this much water being around all these machines.
Yeah, any compression chamber that has a pressure gauge in my
gas is leaking out every once in a while.
No thanks.
Yeah,
I don't.
And we even see it explode later. So yeah, that's a real threat.
Yeah. Have you seen what happens when a hot water tank fails?
Yep. Huge machines and tubes everywhere in the room. Then she Lane goes with her friends to town and they keep seeing children like reaching up to the sky, praising the sun position. But then the clouds part and a naked Lane is in the sky that the children are praying to. And Lane looks up and sees it. Lots of people can see it. Yeah, this is a shared vision of everybody. So Lane goes and does she starts Googling, starts doing research on the Navi. We meet who she calls the Cheshire Cat, who seems like he's like Ash Jeeves. Like he's a helper for search engines, but he's also super annoying.
No, he's a dude. And
yeah, I know he's a dude.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's the really fat guy laying on the bed eating snacks.
Oh, you think he's one of the knights?
Yeah, he's a knight. He's got the same mouth. I bet you he's a knight.
Okay. Yeah, so she does research on this child killer scientist who had done an experiment where, because all children are a little bit psychic, he basically hooked up a bunch of them to a machine, and the end result was that they died. But someone has taken the schematics and is now recreating the experiment wirelessly. So all these children had created an apparition of Lane in the sky together.
It's basically what happens when 5G goes worldwide.
Stop it.
Is that how people get cancer?
That's what it was.
Oh god.
Or is it
It's
COVID?
the birds, man. There aren't any birds. They're
There aren't
not
any
real.
birds.
Stay away from the 5Gs. You'll get chipped.
Yeah.
Sorry, Troy. I couldn't help
Oh
myself.
my god. The rails. However, this search ends with like Lane trying to talk to the knights about it, who are applied to be the ones doing it, and being like, "You guys are losers," and then like she just drops it, and that's the last we hear about it. Oh yeah, but the red dog goggle guys are back, and she goes outside to yell at them, and that's when her cooling system explodes, and they're like, "Yeah, a bomb was planted on you, basically an online bomb, and it exploded her system."
Even
And
more
somehow
evidence.
they knew it was going to happen.
Well,
Yeah,
they are there
yeah.
to protect her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's even more indication that was the Cheshire Cat was the knight, because they
Yeah,
said the
you're
knights
right.
must have uploaded the
Yeah,
parasite.
good call on that one. Yeah, that's gotta be right. She thinks they're the knights, and they're like, actually, the knights are the ones who just bombed you. We're here to protect you. Not that they're good guys, because I don't think they technically are.
They're mercs. That's what I get the impression of.
Yeah. Now where the explosion was, there's like a hole in her wall and just more jumbles of wire. So like her room is now expanding outside.
Yeah.
She notes that every time she's in the wired, she's acting less like herself. So she's really starting to notice the differences between her personalities. And
Okay. I loved just the fact that they were emphasizing this so much, because the difference between personalities, and they really show it when she's like walking down the corridor and there's people that are sitting on either side and they're just basically chattering mouths with no faces. This was really cool as an allegory for how different people are in person than when they get online and they're on social media. You just have a completely different personality that comes out a lot of the time.
Yeah, I really thought they were gonna, and maybe it was just because it's 1997 and they hadn't really encountered it yet. This might be a hindsight thing going on, but they didn't really explore the anonymity of it though, because that's when
Yeah.
it really
You're
comes
right.
out, right? And she is going by her real name in all versions of herself. You know, it's not like she's cat lover 69 at Yahoo posting these
Yeah.
things. In this episode, we have two things that go on. First is we get to meet some of the knights. We kind of don't realize that's what's happening. I didn't realize it till later when they died that these were the knights. But we meet a businessman, a grotesque neat, and then a woman. I thought we were going for 7 deadly sins, but they only ever introduced us to 3.
Because of sloth and gluttony.
Yeah, and I thought
lust.
I thought the delivery man was going to be one of them, and he was going to be Envy, because he's always like, "Oh man, that's a cool
Yeah.
navy. I can't afford that one." I really thought we were going 7 deadly sins. I'm always on the lookout for the 7 deadly sins. You know, it's always cool to see. Feel
What's
so
in
smart.
the box?
Not that one.
Oh,
I was talking about Meliodas, and
Yeah.
right.
so yeah, we see them, and they like kill this guy who created a remote wired system. He created Apple Vision Pro, and they murder him for it. The other storyline is those goggle guys come back and they're like, "Lane, get in the car with us," and they take her to
Yeah, didn't seem suspicious at all.
Yeah, well, they did just save her from a bomb. I think they.
Fair.
You got to figure out what's going on. I was like, "Get in that car. We gotta go." I trust Goggles implicitly now.
Plus, at this point, I think Lane is starting to feel a bit more powerful, just because of the things she's experienced well online. She has more agency.
Yeah, I like that she's like researching stuff now and trying to figure out what's going on, which I liked.
Mhm.
Okay, but so this is a really bizarre scene, and this character I still have not figured out. In all my theories, he's the thing. He's probably one of the biggest question marks I still have. They take her to like these apartments, and one of the apartments is labeled as the laboratories. It's a company called something Labs. I didn't write it down, but just know that it's the company that's going to get mentioned more and more. And there's just a guy with an old computer in the room, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me hook this up? I know it's old and I should upgrade, but I just like the old stuff." And so she comes and she does some modifications on it. And she turns it on, and he starts asking her questions like, "Do you know about the different U's? Do you know what's real? Your mother and father, your mother and father. When did they meet? When's your birthday?" Just asking her these questions, and then she flips to Wired Lane, tells him off, and then just leaves. Jeremy, do you have any? Jason, you too. I'm sure you theory crafted a little, maybe. I know this guy's the head of the company, and we're told by the Mercs that, hey, we're here to stop the Wired and reality from merging. They need to stay separate. The Wired just needs to be a thing that people can use to, play games. It needs to just stay its own separate thing, but not be a world. And then we find out this guy's playing them and is on. He's like, yeah, I'm on board for the merger thing.
Yeah.
Why?
I think.
Who is he?
Who is this guy? I thought you were talking about like why did she switch personalities?
No, I don't know why she switched personalities.
I was pretty confused about this guy because I was like, is he government? Is he corporation? Which
I
that
think he's
doesn't seem to be the
corporation.
case. But which corporate? Because it doesn't seem to be the corporation that created Lane.
It is. It's the one that fired the scientist.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It is. And I think it's the one housing her. Like they're behind everything.
That's the
but
impression I got.
they are against the Knights. They want to stop the Knights. They don't want the god of the Wired to merge the two realities and him take it over. But
Lane explicitly says that she's created to tear the barrier down.
Right.
And if they created her, then and now they don't want it to happen.
Right.
That is more confusing.
Right, which is so the Mercs are like, hey, we killed this. This is all going to happen in a little bit, but the Mercs literally tell Lane, we're stopping the merger. You can't do it either, but we're gonna go. We're not gonna do anything to you. And then when the Mercs get paid, this guy's like, ha ha ha, tricked you. Totally wanted the merger the whole time.
So that's probably why God Guy got fired, because he created her to do that against the will of the corporation.
You got it. That's my impression. Yeah. Yeah. So he created her to do it against the will of the corporation, but the issue is he embedded himself in the programming. And I don't think they know how to get rid of him. So I think she's the only tool, since they don't know what she is. And he didn't necessarily create her. He says he created her, but there's a lot of explanation given about like how the Earth has its own harmonic frequencies and all the people are going to be neurons when they all get connected, and that the wired industrial like electronic revolution is what connected everybody and allowed the Mother Earth basically to come to life. And so I think he hypothesized her coming into existence, and I think he created this situation by what he did with Protocol 7. And that's why I think he says he created her. Not because he programmed her and created this version of her, but because he set all the pieces in place where she could manifest and come into existence. And so now that she's in existence and she created her own body spontaneously, I don't think they had any control over creating her body. I think she manifested it. They didn't know what to do with her. And so they put her in a family. This is just my theory. They put her in a family and they're observing her and they're trying to figure out what is going on. And because we can't allow the merger if this guy is in control as God of the Wired. So maybe she's something that can be used against him to dethrone him. And at the same time, he's trying to use her because he theorized her existence and now wants to basically have her ruling with him. And so I think that's the game that's being played by these three factions: God, the corporation, and her. Corporation still wants the merger, but they want to be in control. They don't want God to be in control.
Okay, so they think if God's out, they'll have the reins of whatever happened. Because they do
That's what
mention
I
they do mention after that she does some research on them, and they do mention that they like to have control of finances in the Wired and stuff like that. That
Mhm.
they do try to manipulate the Wired too. I remember that being called out. Okay.
Mhm. But they don't know whether she's friend or foe, and they don't know the extent of her power. And I think that's why he was asking so many questions. He's like, we're trying to figure things out without at the same time alerting you that we're trying to control you.
All right. So yeah, the next episode is her searching for the information. She tries to talk to her parents about it, like, "Hey, this happened," and they just stare at her, like, gross.
This is amazing. I was like, talk about creepy. It's very well done. How
Also,
creepy this is.
it's a weird detail, and it disappeared later. But their fridge door has like all these slots for like soda and juice and stuff. Like it's like a huge array of drinks, and I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! Look at that organization." And then later, it's just a regular fridge door, and I was really bummed out. But in this scene, I remember thinking, "So many juice options."
And this just reinforces how much Mom just does not like Lane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She's just
It's
like,
like
I
every
can't
time.
stand this little girl in my house.
Yep. Yep. Every time she looks at her, it's like with the most miserable scowl. Ugh.
Like there's zero motherly love there. She's just like,
Yeah.
can you just go?
She can't even fake it. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
At least Dad ends up with some genuine feelings, but Mom's just like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, good on Lane for bringing, keeping her alive and not just resetting without her.
All right. So at school, Alice comes up and she's like, "Lane, are you the one who did it?" And what's happened is a rumor has been spread around about Alice and a male teacher. Now this is middle school.
Yeah, they're 14.
Yeah, 14. So it's pretty messed up. But it, by every implication of the anime, it's real. Like they are doing bad stuff.
Well, that's the thing that I'm not confident it is real. I'm confident that it's
Yeah.
real in her head. Like she wanted it, she's imagining it, but I don't
It
know
seems
that
like
anything
she's
ever happened.
fantasizing about it. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It
Well,
doesn't
but
explicitly
she
say.
is
that.
with him at the end. That is him.
But she's
the final
older.
What?
episode. She is.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
a lot older.
Wait, what? That was him?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
almost sure.
yeah, that was him. But the thing is like in this particular scene where we see her with him, that's in her head.
It does show she's fantasy. You're right.
Yeah.
But the rumor doesn't seem to be that she has a crush.
No. That's the thing is everybody calls Lane at this point a peeping Tom.
Right.
So I think Lane shared more about not just that she was crushing on him, but what she was doing while she was crushing on him. And I think that was the humiliating part.
Okay. So, yeah, but basically what we just described. So a rumor's gone on about Alice, and then a rumor goes around about Lane that she's a peeping Tom because she's the one who sent out the rumor. This is where she's like, wait, my other self is out of control.
Is a gray. My other self is a gray. It's the little alien in a Christmas sweater.
Yeah, that happens in the next episode too. But yeah, this is the one where we see Wired Lane on Alice's bed, like laughing at her about having caught her and stuff.
And this is so weird because it's like, is this in Alice's head or has Lane manifested herself again and she can disappear at will? Like, what's her power set? What are we dealing with here? Is this just a hallucination that's being manipulated by Lane from the Wired? I don't know.
Well, I tend to believe that she has complete control over reality. She just doesn't it's not a conscious control. I think at this point it's the two personalities are using it their own ways. I mean, she
That
can
adds
roll
up.
it back.
She's
and
about to
reset it.
have full control of reality consciously,
Yeah.
so it kind of makes sense that at this point she's almost at a subconscious
Mhm.
control. Lane confronts the other Lane and tries to strangle her, and this scene's really creepy. the voice, okay, I'll you go into at the dub, but I thought the voice actor does such a good job of voicing these two same person, different people. Where one Lane is like, "Why do I have to feel your body heat? Why do you even have body heat? That's so freaky." And the other Lane's like, "Everyone, look, I'm killing myself." Ha 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 ha. It is unsettling.
It's very unsettling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then God confronts Lane and tells her that she's now omnipresent in the Wired, and that she's the one who spreads the rumors. And it shows all those talking heads that Jeremy mentioned earlier, and all those heads are Lane heads now, implying that any information now that she's getting back came from her anyway. Like she is the full.
Uh-huh.
And this is the first time she mentions she wants to delete the data of what happened.
Mhm.
Then we get a discussion. Okay, so this episode has a bunch of like cutaways to a documentary about different science stuff that's happening.
Yeah,
First
this was
is
cool.
Area 51, and then there's the MJ12 document. There's the waves that Jeremy mentioned, and it eventually mentions the scientist who was trying to harness those waves and created Protocol 7 of the Wire, which is just bringing that up to a level where the psyche consciousness could be added into the Wired world.
So, aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Lane sees a little alien in a Freddy Krueger sweater at her door. She keeps arguing with people online. She goes to Siberia and she's given a envelope by the bouncer, and there's another new chip inside. It has the label of the Knights, and so she goes to Taro and takes him to her room, and then accuses him of being with the Knights, and he admits that he helps them, but he's not one of them. He's just been doing stuff for her. Them. And they talk about the chip, which is a memory something.
I like how she threatens him with it by shoving it in his mouth as if she's gonna like plug it into him to make it work on him. And that freaks him out.
Yeah.
It's a memory override chip. And then he says the Knights are trying to override the world to make one truth a reality. He gives her a kiss and he leaves. And then she has a memory of the first time she was brought to this home. And then we're told about the scientist making the brainwaves. He was fired by the tech lab, that the evil company. They fired him for it, and then he was found dead. He committed suicide. And then we see Lane in the street, and this man is standing in front of her. And this is our last character to talk about, Masami Eri, a.k.a. Wired God. Wicca Wicca. Brought it back.
Nicely done. Oh, wicka, wicka, wicka.
Okay, you guys' thoughts on Eri? You want Jeremy to go first? Because he's got theories. You can see it in his eyes. They're burning.
Well, if he's gonna go on a tangent, let me get this out of the way real quick.
Okay.
I found the architect from the Matrix 100 times more coherent than what this guy tried to spit out. I did not like the pontificating that he attempted to do, because a lot of his philosophical mumbo jumbo didn't line up with what he was doing, and it didn't quite make sense. So in that respect, I didn't. He was attempting to continually define himself into the position of God, and he could never quite get there, even though he kept claiming that he was. And then having a similar power set to Lane, where he could just manifest in reality, was weird. didn't have much of an explanation there. But I don't know. His battle, quote unquote, with Lane wasn't very compelling either. Like she just she got him
Annihilated.
all riled up, and then she just wrecked him, and then all of a sudden he's gone. It's like, okay, that's lovely. So, but yeah, I'd love to hear what Jeremy has to say.
So, I actually thought this character took the anime into very tropey villain territory. Like I have seen his type of character so many times in different anime, very recognizable. Probably one of the most grounding aspects of the anime for me. Um, it just kind of brought everything back to, oh, okay, yeah, I understand this type of storytelling. Um, I find it very difficult to believe that he was able to program in his own memory into the machine. I mean, maybe he downloaded it. They have those things that the other scientists talked about.
I think he leaked into the wire before they sealed off being able to leak in.
Well, he said that he was actually he put himself in deliberately at a higher level, like above the software. There was like a package of his memory, and I was like, okay, that means that somehow he translated his memory and everything about who he was, translated his psyche into code, because he described it as if he wrote it, like not like he hooked up a chip and then it just read his mind or used some device to do it. So that kind of threw me a little bit, but at the same time, it was 90s, and
Right, I was about to say,
90s was still entertaining. That
probably okay.
yeah. So that part kind of threw me a little bit. But I liked how, for me, it brought coherency to the story. Just having him outright say, oh yeah, I created you, and Protocol 7 was important because of this. And it kind of, for me, it stitched the pieces back, well, not back together, but it stitched them together in a way that made the story make sense. And so I really didn't mind that he was, just sort of, I can never remember the words, not extrapolating, but what is the word when you're just giving, telling you about the story?
Expedition or expedition?
Yes, exposition.
Exposition.
Yes, that's the one. I liked that he was just giving all that exposition because the story needed it. We, like you said, we had gotten so much like weird, sometimes nonsensical stuff, that to finally have somebody come in and be like, bleh, unload all this, I appreciated it.
In the first episode, they mentioned God, and the fact that this is all like an allegory for religion still hit me like a freight train right here. I was like, what? Oh, so this is like more religious than technobabble that we're really dealing with here. Like beliefs and religion and the power of all that stuff, and then Jeremy's has his theory, and I think Jerry's theory is 100% on. I just think there's another layer to it. He's actually even kind of already hinted at it. I don't think he even disagrees with me, but there's another layer of religion in there. And I don't even mean a specific religion. I think it's meant to be very abstract and vague of religion. But yeah, there's God and stuff in there. And when this character comes in this scene with spouting all this stuff, and I was like, how did I miss this? But I completely agree that he comes off almost as like mustache twirly villain. Like, I was underappreciated in the real world, and now here I am a god. And oh no, but I've used you to get power. But now you have given you too much power. And what shall become of us? We will battle. However,
but when he actually was like, she asked him a question about like, okay, well then how did you come to exist? And he's like, oh no, there might be you're telling me there's a real God?
Okay, so that's so my theory is that Lane is behind everything. The entity Lane, not the human Lane. That the entity Lane, whether she's God or the psychic connection all humans share at some level, was lonely and wanting to feel love, much like the human Lane, almost in the exact state, wanting to connect with people. This Wired gets built, and then she inspires Eerie to create this thing so that all these series of events can happen and she can find a human connection. And so what she says to Eerie is, yeah, you came up with all this, but that's not the actual original thing. Some idea didn't come from you, it was given to you, implying that God, who again I think is the true Lane, gave that to him. All this is all Lane's machinations. He's a puppet for her, the true her. That's my overall theory. Whereas Jeremy gets into like the how he built on the science and stuff, and that stuff is all great. Like I said, I 100% agree with everything he theorizes. So yeah, I love that he has a meltdown at that point. The idea that he was
puppet. Used.
Yeah, he's not the puppet master. He's the puppet. Freaks him out. And his whole arc is there. You don't need a body. You don't need a body. You don't need a body. And when the chips go down, he builds a body. And Lane calls him out. You freaking hypocrite. And I love that. As quick as their fight was, Jason, like it wasn't grand or cool or anything. I love that use of the theme against him, that his whole thing is we don't need bodies, and then like I said, at the moment of truth he builds a body. So good stuff for a villain.
He can't touch her in the real world unless he does.
So yeah, they talk. I also love this scene where they're talking because they swap bodies. Her voice is coming out of his mouth and he's talking to her. And it's really
that was hard to pick up on the sub. I thought I was misunderstanding what was going on because I was like, this dialogue is weird. Like he's saying things that she should be saying, and she's saying things that I'm glad that it made more sense in English.
Yeah. He made the knights because all gods need worshippers. And he goes on to the you don't need a body. And then she starts having, tells him a lie, and then starts having visions of like being at school and her desk isn't there, and Alice telling her that she's not needed anymore. She goes home and no one's there. All the plants are dead, and she goes to her sister rooms, and her dad comes in and says goodbye to her, and he's like, this is the end. We fulfilled our contract, and you've reached the end of whatever is happening here, so we're leaving. And tells her that he's envious that she got to be a human with free will, and that he loves her.
That's what made me wonder: is he a program?
And there is a point where Lane says, "You're all just applications," which is really interesting too. But then again, that just is her philosophically describing them as something. But yeah, the biggest thing that was confusing for me too was that if she's in her wired form and she's up in the clouds at a table, why is he there with her unless he was always a construct of her imagination? So I don't know. But at the same time, he's with his wife.
Unless at this point the
copied him.
That the barrier's broken.
And it's supposedly the barrier is broken, but I think she's still like... Well, I guess, is the barrier broken?
I do have a theory about the dad in the sky, because that went through me really hard.
Okay.
Especially since Lane not only is God, she's an allegory for God, which means human Lane is going to be Jesus. Now she's sitting at a table with a guy in the sky. But I actually think right before that scene, she attacks Wired Lane, who's been annoying her with all this talk about, do you want to be a god? Do you want to be human? We're alone in this world. Why don't you hit reset again? You just hit reset. Why don't we just reset one more? She like zaps her. And then right after that scene, she's at the table with her dad. I think the dad is Wired Lane taking on a new form of someone that hey, you need to understand what I am. And again, it comes back to the religion where Father, Son, Holy Ghost, same thing, but different things. I'm the father to you. I think it's just taking the dad's form. I think the human dad is still eating breakfast with his crappy wife.
So same.
That's cool.
That would be the same thing as what happened to her when she was talking to the doll, and then it turned into her dad, and then her mom.
Yeah.
I thought that was Eerie trying to manipulate her. All switching forms over and over. She keeps asking, are you my real mom? Are you my real dad? And they're like, hey, but you don't need a body. So I thought that was all Aerie, like
Mm.
just trying on different faces.
I thought that was just her own psyche, but that's interesting.
Could be too.
Yeah.
Or
Because
it could be nothing, and we don't know what it is.
well, so
it's definitely something.
let's get to the end because a lot happens at the end that ties all this stuff together.
Yeah.
So let's push forward.
I mean, does it though?
Yes.
It
Yes.
totally does. Hard yes.
Yeah. So goodbye to her dad. She does research on the Knights, finds a list of them, and releases it. So the Goggle guys and everyone else that's working for this company basically murder all the Knights. It's reported as suicides all over the world, but yeah, all the Knights are taken out. And she tells God, "Hey, now you don't have any followers." He's like, I still have one, and then there's you. The Goggles come to see Lane, and then this is where they're telling her like, we have to. You can't have the Wired be its own thing.
And I love you.
And the big guy takes off his goggles and says, "I love you."
He's a worshiper now.
He says, "I don't know what you are, but I love you."
Uh-huh. Convert.
Yeah. She has another argument with God and breaks a bunch of wires in the street. Episode 11 is weird. We see the house in the rot. We see it looked almost like a flashback episode, but the memories are all combobulated and jigsawed together. But then we do get God visiting Lane in her room, and he's like, "Oh my, you put an emulator for the computer in your brain, and you're gonna overflow." She like programmed her own brain to run as an emulator for the OS of the Navi. Says it points out she's not a machine; she's software. She has a talk with Chisa and the shooter from the school. So Chisa's like, "You don't need to die." The shooter's like, "Oh, it's really easy to die. Let me show you how." And then Lane uses the alien body. It's really weird, man. You just, trust the shrooms.
Yeah.
She's on the alien body, and she goes to talk to Lisa or Alice, and tells Alice it wasn't me that spread the rumors. It was the other Lane. But she says she's going to fix it. And then the next day, no one remembers about the rumor being spread except for Alice. And she sees Lane, who's smiling. This really freaks Alice out. Taro brags that he kissed an angel. Also, so in my theory, Taro is a stand-in for Judas Iscariot, and that's why he kissed her, because he had betrayed her.
But what was the betrayal?
He was working for the Knights.
But she knew.
Okay, fine. Throw my theory out the window.
No. I guess I could
Great,
see
Jeremy.
it.
Thanks.
No, I guess I could see it. That
It's it's a big stretch because I just couldn't figure out why. I got to my theory a lot because of this sentence where he's like, "I kissed an angel," and I'm like, why is he saying that? And as I was putting these all together, and then I was like, well, there was one big famous kiss.
Yeah, that's true.
If you look at the stories, the news starts telling everyone to love Lane. Let's all love Lane. The goggles, the boss comes to pay the goggles, and he's like, "Hey guys, get somewhere where there's not basically no Wi-Fi, no satellites." And they're like, "Nothing like that exists." He's like, "I know, you're gonna die," and then they do.
And Lane is the one that kills them.
Lane kills both the goggles guys.
Yeah.
Guess we know what happens with converts.
Alice,
right?
Alice
one
goes-
is a oh, come on. I can't remember. It's the term that you use. Okay, one's a sacrifice and the other's a heathen. I can't remember what the word I'm looking for is. Because the short one didn't believe in her, but the tall one did. So the tall one would be a sacrifice because he got treated the same, but he died second.
So Lane asked, like, why are there so many me's? There's more, and it's implied there's more than just Wired and human. Like, why are there so many me's? And she says, well, there's not a ton of me's. There's only so many, but it's just how people see me. So in my theory, it's that just how people have a belief in God and how they believe him to be. Some people, in Old Testament, he's more vengeful and aggressive, right?
Mhm.
Where in the New Testament he's more forgiving and
Mhm.
kind. And so that to me is the explanation of the different versions of Lanes. It's how people believed her to be.
Mhm. Mhm. This is very interesting. I hadn't considered this as a possibility. I could totally see it as an intended way to read this scenario, just because this is used a lot in different storytelling. And so
Mhm.
now that you're pointing out like the different pieces, I can totally see it. Um, I was thinking that she was not anything bigger than just the world mind or the like Jungian collective unconscious, because that's another one that gets used a lot. And so I was like, that still leaves room for all the same things, but it doesn't
Right.
bring in that extra level. And I could totally see them going for that extra level, just even if nothing else, to shove it in there because it would be another layer.
Yeah, well, even if so, both can work though, because like one could be an allegory and one could be the literal text. Like she's literally just, and I think they mean it to be abstract.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a part where they talk about the wired isn't meant to be an overlay of the reality. It was actually an overlay of something that humans haven't reached yet,
Mm-hmm.
implying a beyond, and that where whatever came into the wired came from that, and then is using that to get to reality.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm reading it correctly, which you guys will tell me if I am or not, from that documentary, we found out that there was a Hertz level transmission happening from the Earth itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if Lane existed there as a lesser form, and then as soon as the
Right.
wire was created, she was
Mm-hmm.
able to come into her true self.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like
Yep.
she was lonely and maybe didn't have full sentience or sapience. Like she wasn't aware, but she was present, like almost a primal presence, primal entity sort of thing.
So
That was
she's
my
Mother
interpretation.
Earth.
Yeah, she's Mother Earth is what I thought. Now, she could have been not necessarily an entity of her own, but something that uh, was sort of like the synaptic connections between all the neurons of the humans. And so once connected, something is birthed from that collective unconscious. And that would be separate from Mother Earth, because Mother Earth would just be providing essentially the flow and the energy, but the configuration is from the humans. And so that would be like a collective human persona that would be created, a psyche of all humanity as opposed to Earth. But it'd kind of be a joint thing. So there's a few different ways to interpret that one, if that's the situation. And if that is the situation, either one of those, where she was either Earth before or she is the collective unconscious combined with the Earth, that would mean that she didn't exist uh, in the sense of being a creator of more than the Earth.
Right.
Because if she's tied to the Earth, then she's just the Earth. That's where, like in my mind, it was limited to that. But I can totally see the allegory beyond
Right.
that.
Right. And I think because, like I said, they really did mention those waves, and I do think that
Yeah.
plays an important part. So I think it's an abstract. She's a higher being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can connect her to anything. But then, yeah, like I said, the allegory of the Christian stories of God, especially with what's coming up
Mm-hmm.
here soon, um, which I'll get into more. So we have Alice visiting her room, asking, why am I the only one who had to remember? I didn't want to remember. Why did you leave the memories on
So,
me?
and Alice is like visits her house. It's in complete disarray. Like she can barely get in the front door. There's so much trash and like refuse everywhere. So obviously the house has been abandoned. Besides Lane. And
Mm-hmm.
like even going upstairs, she smells like this weird smell. But then she sees the sister at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, sister's
Mm-hmm.
there.
What? But then she disappears.
Did
Not,
she
not much you
disappear?
can, not much you can do with a babbling sister.
Yeah, she was just babbling. Yeah.
Right, but where'd she go?
Yeah. I don't remember her disappearing. Did she? So many different scenes with the sister doing weird
Yeah.
things. I'm just probably
Yeah,
mixing them all
I
up.
don't know.
But this was interesting that I was wondering, like, why did she delete everything and then have to go and do a reset? And I think it was because deleting it wasn't enough, right? Deleting and preserving Alice meant that she still had all the other effects on reality that she'd had since she came into being as physical Lane in the real world.
I don't think that's it.
So hold on, let's get to the reset, because we do need to talk about the reset, because I actually disagree with you on what she does in the reset. I think she just deletes one thing.
Okay.
But anyway, so Alice comes in and says, why'd you do that? And Lane apologizes. She's telling her she loved her. She says a really important line, and I think this is the most important part. I think this is the theme. I think this is what they were trying to say with the whole story. I think this is what Lane learns from this whole adventure. Alice, you were my best friend. I loved you, and we never connected. So all this story has been about Lane trying to connect with humanity out of a desire to love and be loved. And through Alice has learned, and I think connection kind of comes with it a little bit of control, right? Because God wants to connect everyone and to control them. I think she's saying, I don't need to have that. I can just love you independently from owning you, from having a strong connection with you. If we have to go our separate ways, that love exists anyway. So that love, she can have that love and feel that love even without the connection, because they never met up on the internet. That's how it works. The Wired. She didn't need to do what pull all the strings she does with everything else in her reality with Alice, and Alice has shown her that. And then she starts talking about not needing bodies, and Alice is like, no, we do need bodies. They share a heartbeat, again, pushing back against this whole thing about not needing bodies, and shares the importance of that. Harry shows up. He's super angry about this. He forms a giant evil baby body.
Yeah, it's like an Akira body.
Yeah. And Lane again mocks him for needing a body, and then all that electronics equipment in her room, she technopathically controls and smashes him together, and he's dead.
Yep.
I wrote down Lane's room defends her, like she built all this as just like a defense system. You fell into my trap card.
And now I'll take all the pieces of my Navi and crush you.
Yep.
All right, so then Lane, she says she's now confused again. She doesn't know what to do. Alice is in shock, even hurts Lane, scratches her in the face. But Lane hugs her and says sorry. And then the episode, instead of the episode title, it just says reset. And then everything does reset. My understanding was that Lane went and deleted from all reality. She deleted Lane. She didn't go back and like individually change people's stories. She just made it so Lane never existed, which means so we see Chiza's alive and still an outcast. No one wants to invite her to the club. She's weird.
Yeah.
No one remembers Alice. Yeah. Alice is with her friends. There's no rumors going around about her. Aerie is walking to his job, swearing he's gonna quit. I'm gonna quit. Hates his job. I'm gonna quit. We see the goggles guys are working on putting up power lines. The delivery driver, he has a daughter. And then we see the kid, Taro. Lane appears on his screen for a second, but he doesn't recognize her. And then he runs along with his friends. What that said to me, and this is really where my theory started, was Lane's existence both made Aerie create the Protocol 7, just like she suggested in the last episode when she calls him out. She was like, yeah, you're not really the one the idea came from. So she never gave him that idea. So Protocol 7 was never made. And Chisa didn't die. So remember I said, Chisa, we never got to find out where we fall. Well, there was one flashback where Lane says, remember we walked together home one time, and it showed that flashback, and like halfway through, Chisa just turns around and says, I don't need to be here anymore, and runs away.
That's when she killed herself?
I think
Lane
walked together, convinced her to kill herself right there.
Yeah.
To push, I think that was Wired Lane, to get regular Lane to start connecting. That's literally everything that happened was Lane's fault, and by deleting her, everything was undone.
The only thing I disagree with is I don't think that she existed yet until after Protocol 7 came out. I'm pretty sure that that was explicitly established in
But someone had
episode
to
11.
give Ari the idea.
Ari could have come up with the idea from looking at the papers. I just think that she maybe stopped that from happening, or the fact that she already exists now means that she's not, when he does create Protocol 7, or if he does, which means they're back on Protocol 6 maybe, but if he does, she's not going to materialize because she's already existing now. It's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be her materializing a body out of nothing.
She told him, you didn't come up with that idea. It was given to you.
Right, but I did not get any impression that it was given to him by her. When he said there is a God, he could have just said, you are God, whereas
Right,
he was trying to make her into a God. That wouldn't have been a shocker for him.
But the only thing that changed was that she doesn't exist, so now he doesn't have the idea. So that implies the idea came from her.
Well, but I disagree that that's the only thing that changed. I think that's the major thing that changed. But I do think he may still have the idea. It maybe isn't having the same effect that he was expecting, and that's why he wants to quit. Maybe kicking things up to Protocol 7 didn't produce Lain. The body didn't show up. So that's the only thing I disagree on.
I find Troy's argument a little more compelling, but maybe I'm just being biased.
Maybe you're just trying to get to an end.
Maybe.
No, I don't really have a theory on one way or the other with that. I think it's what I was trying to say, in that I find the idea of, here he is, he has not created Protocol 7 because Lain doesn't exist, or at least it seems to correlate that way, but I'm not sure we have a definitive answer.
Yeah.
The last part of my theory, the one that ties it back into Christianity, is that if this is all Lane's idea, Lane creates a human version, gets a human version of herself created. She didn't create it herself, right? She just pushes the dominoes that will eventually create a human Lane. And now human Lane has sacrificed herself to save humanity.
Yeah, it's the Lain Saya.
Yeah, it almost was, it's too on the nose. Now she still exists, and again is having tea in the sky with her father who loves her.
Now, what makes all of this make sense, and this just kind of came to me. What if everything that we're considering base reality is actually just a simulation?
I know, simulation.
And then the software on top of the simulation is where Lain exists.
Yeah.
There was one point.
Always a possibility.
Yeah, there was one point where I had to like slap myself in the face and say, you have to accept what they say is reality. Because I mean, she could just be a crazy person the whole time too.
Yeah,
that's entirely a possibility.
It just zooms out. She's in a straitjacket, rocking back
Yes.
and forth.
Yes. Well, the first category for this, if you go to like my anime list, the first category listed is dementia. So that is a totally viable interpretation. It may not be correct, but it is an interpretation of it. And also what she says, like one of the last things she says is, I'll always be with you, or something like that, which again ties very much to Christianity and like the Messiah. Right.
The ending is, after the tea with Dad in the sky, is that Lain has now figured out she can access any memories, even memories from the future that haven't happened yet, which means time doesn't matter to her. She appears to Alice in the future. Alice is super excited to see her, but doesn't actually know who she is. She just knows that she cares about her. And then Alice goes about her day. And then, she says that thing, which to me said that Lain, this is a little extra, just for a nice little bow on top. It's totally out of my head, though. Whereas memory is a data that can be changed. Love is not. That is a permanent fixture that she can't get rid of or alter.
Even though it no longer has an explanation. It's just there.
Emotions don't have explanations.
And they give you super strength.
Do.
They make you super strong in fights, too.
Oh, my God.
Definitely. Especially fights you're losing.
Yeah. You need friends. You need more friends if you're losing. And you need them to die.
Let's do some final thoughts and final reviews. Jason, you want to kick us off?
Sure. This is a mess. I mentioned in our pre-show because like one of my favorite gaming franchises, Five Nights at Freddy's, and not so much because of the gaming aspect, because the games are fun. I played most of them, but especially the news VR ones, really good. Anyways, that game doesn't have like explicit storytelling, or at least it has a lot of hints and a lot of lore that you can go look for, but outside of the main game loop, there's not a ton there. And Troy brought up an interesting point. Would I like it as much, or the lore, would I like it as much without like this huge community of people that are like theory crafting and coming up with different ideas to give me a coherent story? And I've been thinking about this entire episode. Like, what's the big difference between like why I like one and not the other? And I think having that cohesive thing that I can lean on to help me understand it a bit better, I think definitely helps a lot. And so my opinion of this may change after a bunch of the videos that I've got queued up to watch and see what other people think about this. What we've discussed tonight doesn't really change my opinion much of what I experienced. And what I experienced wasn't that great for me. And so for me, I'm giving this a 2. It was just a jumbled mess. The animation wasn't great. The dub was not great. And I'm still trying to figure out if what we've talked about and what we've theory crafted here is right. So my opinion I'm open to having my opinion changed in the upcoming days, but for right now, that's where I have it.
Jeremy, how about you?
I found the first couple of episodes to be very difficult. They came across very bland and also confusing. As the story started to progress and get going, I enjoyed it a lot more, especially when we got in the second half. I really started enjoying it. I'm going to give this a 4. It's not a 5. I think the story could be put together in a much more clear and synced way, and yet still have that same gravity. And I really would love it if it had a different art style, better art. I think you give me those two things and it would get a full point and be up to a 5. But it's a good anime.
I'm gonna go with 3. I had more fun discussing it than I did watching it. I come back to Sunny Boy, and I think on the podcast I made the joke about Animal Farm. I think.
Yeah.
But Animal Farm's a really good one. You know what's great about Animal Farm? It's a really good story about animals, and you care about Napoleon the pig, you care about the horse, and then after you get done reading, your teacher's like, okay, well the horse meant the worker class, and Napoleon meant this guy who wanted to do good things with communism, and you're like, oh, it meant all this stuff, but you enjoyed the story itself because you cared about the characters. It was well built, and Sunny Boy did that for me too. I liked the characters. I liked the story of Sunny Boy, and then had fun dissecting it and getting into the deeper layers. With this, it's just deeper layers. There's almost nothing to enjoy along the ride, especially because Lane's reality is so fractured. She's hallucinating. She's not always her. She's not even sure what's happening and what's real. It makes it really hard to care and follow along and enjoy the story because it's so jumbled. I had fun dissecting it, but I'm probably way off on my theories. I probably got hooked on that God thing, and the writer's like, "No, I was saying stay off Twitter." So, but it was fun anyway. I really enjoyed the experience. I'm not, I'll never watch it again, but I'm really glad I watched it. It's always been something I've seen in video stores, Hot Topics, and been like, oh, I wonder what that is. And now I know, and I got to do it with my buds. So I'm really excited to see people who have watched it before or watched it the first time what your guys' thoughts are. So please do send comments to us. on our Twitter at Baka Podcast. Don't listen to Lane. Get on Twitter. Or come to our website, theanimebakaclub.com, or leave a comment where you found the podcast. We'll really appreciate that. And don't forget to check what our next anime is going to be. It's the winner of your guys' votes, which is there in the description. Congratulations. Insert anime name here. Yeah, congratulations. I don't have the editing skills to fix that. All right, let's say goodbye.
Present day. No. Thanks for
Present
listening.
time.